Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. How far along is server meshing and what are the next steps? That's what we're talking about today. How are CIG deploying it? What exactly is it? What are we getting when? Server meshing has always been a core component of Star Citizen's MMO puzzle. Technology that allows multiple servers to dynamically take control of an area based on population and seamlessly share that. Eventually, server meshing will allow for a whole star system, planet, ship, building, room, basically any object container to be a potential server, and these servers can be nested in each other. They can spin up and down as necessary, allowing potentially tens of thousands of players, potentially all the players, to effectively be on a single shard. Star Citizen will soon be publicly testing the replication layer, which is the last main step before static server meshing is put in. The replication layer makes sure the player and server have the correct info and then communicates state changes between them. It provides a very efficient solution and a load of redundancy, but one of the main things it will allow to do as well is that multiple servers can then be plugged into the replication layer to allow for the aforementioned static server meshing. So, static server meshing won't allow for dynamically creating servers based on population yet, but rather it has set bounds. An example would be that you could have 5 servers controlling the Stanton system, each taking an area around Microtech, Crusader, Hurston, ArcCorp, that's all of the major planets there, and maybe another high traffic area like Grimhex. Although dynamic server meshing is the end goal, static server meshing is a necessary step and will be completed much sooner. You don't necessarily have to have it divided like that, the static server meshing either. You could literally have a single server taking control of Stanton and a single server taking control of PYRO, and then them still be on the same shard. This is a massive difference, obviously. At the moment, a server and a shard are basically the same thing, but once we have the replication layer, once we have then static server meshing, it won't be. In fact, this should go into testing pretty soon, but before all of that, the replication layer will be on the preview build of the game, go into testing, and then be refined somewhat. Anyway, at CitizenCon 2953, CIG showed off server meshing working on a small scale in an enclosed environment. This was an example of static server meshing, but the fact that they have something working is amazing and genuinely a massive milestone. Literally, Chris Roberts got a bit emotional talking about it actually working. Previously, there were concerns that server meshing in the way that CIG wanted to do it just wouldn't work, but now it looks very likely that it will. To what level will it scale up to? Will it allow for all players to be on the same shard? Remains to be seen. I suspect there will be some upper limits, at least in the mid-term, even with the sort of end-game dynamic server meshing. So there was some more information on this from Benoit Beauséjour, technical director of CIG. Basically, a fan interviewed him at CitizenCon 2953 in French, and I want to go through a bit of a summary and highlights of what he said there. Server meshing is out of the realms of R&D and in testing. At the very least, it's much less research and a huge amount more development currently. They are actually further along than they showed us at CitizenCon as well. Ships can now transition between servers, they actually have that working. They do need to ensure that every game system, every part of the game is working and tested with server transitions as well, which can take some time. The creation of the demo that they showed at CitizenCon allowed them to move forward with various parts of the technology and move on to the next stages of server meshing. So they were able to sort of get it all together, prove it all worked, and then go, these things are necessary for it to expand out. We may see server meshing tested in experimental modes and or the preview branch in the very near future. The plan is to gradually bring the tech into the game, unlike what they did with persistent entity streaming, which left the game in quite a bad state for 3.18 and some of 3.19. But basically, they can do this in sort of steps, that they want to step it through and then sort of put it in more thoroughly, make sure it's all working, integrate it into the live servers as and when it's sensible. Short term, we're going to have one server per star system. That's the next sort of step of, that's what static server meshing is going to look like. So the very first version, server meshing, will have PYRO and Stanton each on their own servers, but on the same shard, which means they sort of seamlessly transition between the two, although you're going to be using a jump point. So people might say, what's the point? Well, there's a good lot of point of testing it, at least in that way, because then you can know the technology works and you can have the same shard with a larger population overall. They are confident that some form of static server meshing will be in our hands by next year. Devs are now moving on from Squadron 42 work, because it's feature complete, to the persistent universe and integrating features from Squadron 42 into the persistent universe and working on new ones for the persistent universe. On a little bit of a side note, apparently the dynamic universe is quite advanced and lives in its own little system, but they are waiting to get more systems in and the game to be in the right place to bring it over to the persistent universe properly. So they probably need to get static server meshing in and stuff like that before they actually have that dynamic economy sort of feeding into everything. What are the next steps then? Firstly, the replication layer tests for that are going to be starting in the next few weeks. They will be testing crash recovery, stress testing, and just trying to improve the technology. Secondly, they want to then move to static server meshing with 2 servers connecting PYRO and Stanton. This will have a controlled authority transfer with players and ships crossing between servers on the same shard. Thirdly, they want multiple servers to be then connected in each of the star systems and then have like each of the planets or a particular area covered by a different server. So this is more proper static server meshing, I should say, used a lot more efficiently and sensibly. Fourthly and finally, dynamic server meshing. That's the final step, although obviously once that's in, they'll want to refine it, right? They are still working out if you will be able to choose which shard you can join in each time you log in. If they will allow it, it will be temporary until they get some form of seamless shard transitioning sort of stuff that will enable you to move between shards sort of to get different encounters and to give you a more fulfilling experience in the verse, getting you appropriate gameplay when they want to give you that gameplay. Because on your particular shard, I suppose there might not be any other players in an area that you're in, but if they go, well, actually, we can do some cross-shard stuff, that would be great as well. Cloud Imperium have previously talked about sort of shard affinity, taking you to a shard that it thinks that you should be on, or one that you were on last time, or that you've affected. We don't know exactly how base building is going to work. We don't know changes that you make on one shard, are they going to be reflected on all other shards? Obviously in the short term, they're not. In the long term, they should be. 30Ks are still possible if you lose connection with the replication layer or it crashes, though this should be much rarer as the replication layer won't be overworked and is more robust. In the short term, they're going to be aiming for around 150 players per server for when PYRO comes around, so that's potentially going to be 300, maybe a bit more for when we get the first stage of static server meshing. They're obviously going to try and optimize that as much as possible. We may see server meshing, or at least early server meshing tests in an experimental arena commander mode or on the preview build. Obviously it's quite in-depth, some of the stuff that they need to do, because they need to make sure that when you transition between different servers and everything, that it keeps your missions and the missions can spawn in those areas. Fire can potentially move between servers, an enemy chasing you can move between servers, and all of that needs to be done seamlessly without the players noticing. Boom! That's it from your server meshing update today. That was basically a mixture of what Benoit Bézéjour said from terrible French translation that I did, and some extra context on what we know about server meshing, what was shown at CitizenCon. At the CitizenCon, they only showed basically 3 different zones where the player could move between them, and different servers would take over and move authority between player and objects there. And all of this that's going to be tested soon is just significantly more advanced versions of that. But I'm really excited, and I want to know what you're thinking about this as well. Are you sort of thinking that Cloud Imperium can do it with server meshing, dynamic server meshing, end game of it when it's optimized? Do you think we could see all players effectively in the same shard? Or do you think, no, there's going to be at least some restrictions, even if they just do it America, Europe, Asia? I do know that if they did something like that, they would allow you to move between those servers. When do you think we're actually going to see server meshing in our hands? By the end of this year in some form of testing? Or is it going to be next year? Whatever your questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What is best in life? To crush your enemies? To see them driven before you? And to hear the lamentations of their women? No, of course not. It's NordVPN. I never saw Conan the Barbarian checking his bank balance and then watching some cool shows on Netflix, all while protecting his privacy and being super secure. To be honest, I can't even remember Conan wearing a shirt. Silly Conan. And now, a big old snake god's got your internet history. Good job. Don't be a Conan the Barbarian. Check out NordVPN. Links below for powerful discounts too. Every month we've been giving away a ship for Star Citizen, but for November, to celebrate the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2953, we are giving away a load of different ships, each to a different person. The Avenger Titan, the Drake Cutter, the C-8X Pisces, the Mustang Alpha, and the Nomad. All great starter ships, but also useful for any fleet. They all come with a game package and lifetime insurance. That's all you need to start playing Star Citizen. That's 5 prizes and 5 chances to win. Just comment on any of my videos made during November to be in for a chance of winning. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that goes the extra mile in supporting the channel via Patreon or the join button under my videos and then becoming a channel member. Please consider joining those fabulous people as well. It allows us to make daily content for Star Citizen and Squadron 42, delving into all the news, drama, development info, and gameplay that these games have to offer. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the verse.